Okay, you should be good, Kurt.
Okay. I'll pull up, it's the usual, right? Call the meeting to order, and then has there been any communications to the council? Dr. Kobe,
There has been no communications.
we'd like to give an opportunity for anyone that wants to make comments or make a statement to the council. And then I guess they can also email the chat, right?
Correct. The best thing to do is just get in the Q&A of the chat. We are not receiving nothing, Chairman.
Okay, so we have not received any comments or any public comments or statements. Okay, so the next item is to review the minutes from the last general fund meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Anyone want any discussion? Any council member want to discuss the minutes? Okay, so there's been a motion to approve the minutes in a second. Motion by Vice Chair Maynard, and the motion to second was made by Council Member Hayashi. So we'll take a vote now. Vice Chair Maynard? Approved?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Dr. Bonham is absent, so Council Member Hayashi,
Aye.
Council Member Lee,
Aye.
Council Member Hamasu. Oh, he's not here.
Yes.
Oh, he said yes, okay. And Council Member Ostegard Clem.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the minutes are approved unanimously. Okay. We move on to, I'm trying to pull up the, Dr. Kobe, help me with the next topic. I'm having some challenges pulling up the agenda.
Yeah. So the next item on the agenda is the discussion and vote on total personal income forecast for calendar year 2023. Just to give you guys some background information, you guys are on record for a 4.5% increase in TPI for 2023 and a 3.8% increase for 2024. And this is for calendar year, not fiscal year.
Dr. Kobe, would either you or Dr. Is it Kevin? How do you pronounce his last name?
I'm sorry?
Are you, because normally we have Dr. Bonham lead the discussion on this. So I'm wondering if you could give a little kind of summary to the new council members of what the forecast involves, the personal income forecast.
Sure. I can begin, and then by bars, if you want to jump in.
Yes.
You can jump in if you correct me if I do anything wrong. Okay, so the first question is, why do we do this, right? So this is the total personal income. Within the Constitution, there are two things that are stipulated. One is the Council on Revenues will be the one institution that forecasts the general fund for the state, right? And then so they, by law, by the Constitution, the governor, everybody within the state has to use your forecast for the general fund. The other thing that is stipulated in the Constitution is that spending cannot increase any faster than the average of the total personal income over several years. And so one of the reasons why the total personal, you guys are asked to forecast the total personal income is they need to be able to understand if they're going to breach the ceiling imposed by the constitutional amendment, or Constitution, I'm sorry, that says that this is the ceiling for spending. As of right now, we are the state is not in any danger of breaching that ceiling, so it is not a very closely followed indicator, but that is why you guys are being asked to do this. This is for the Council on Revenue, or I'm sorry, the calendar year, which is different from the fiscal year, which is for the general fund. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that this is total personal income. right? And so one of the things that we always have, total personal income, is essentially government transfers, everybody's income, and rental income. And I'm sure I'm missing one smaller thing. One of the things that there's been a lot of questions about is whether capital gains income is incorporated in that. It is not, right? So TPI is distinct from that, and that's something to consider. So you don't have to really consider stock market movements quite as much as that. Over the past couple of years, it has been a difficult metric to forecast, mainly because of the large fiscal transfers that have occurred, which showed up on the income balance. We do have within the packet, you will see that we have a number of different models that forecast total personal income. And you can look at those and study those and use those to focus on TPI. There hasn't been any big surprises or any big, huge revisions to the data like past years. So it should be a lot easier forecasting these next 2 years than it was when there was large fiscal stimulus occurring through the government transfers. Barbara, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you. I just want to point to tables 3 and 6 that might be of a special things to focus on. Table 3 was referring to the forecast of the council in 2022 for the year 2022. So as you see in August, the forecast was off by 1.5%, but then the October forecast is that usually more accurate as we get closer to the end of the year. So for this year, table 6 kind of reports all the forecasts from the models, as well as in the general fund meeting, the members do submit their forecasts for actually the total personal income, but it's on a fiscal year basis. So we kind of included here, we have the UHERO forecast, we have the DBET forecast, and then we take an average of all the DBET, UHERO, our models forecast, and the members forecast, and that is listed as the last row, which is the average of all independent forecasts. So that's typically something as a good starting point based on past experiences. Thank you.
Dr. Bai, or Dr. Kobe, how would you kind of like describe in a layperson's language what is captured by the total personal income forecast? Because I know it's like wages, returns on investments, and it's money coming into the economy through gifts or inheritance is what I understand, and through federal, like all the federal money that came in during the pandemic. How would you, I don't know, how would you describe what we're capturing with total personal income?
Are you asking about the definition or about the models that we use to
I think more
forecast
from a
TPI?
layperson's point of view, what are we, what makes up the total personal income? And that's, we're trying to measure the growth rate, right? Of personal income.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, at the very end of your packet, there is an appendix that describes what personal income is and all the categories of it. So I would use that to consult it. But just in general, if you can kind of think about economic 101 terms, right? You have GDP, which is really what we talk about. And that is everything that is produced within the economy. And on the other side is you have income, right? And so that is all the income generated from the economy. And more or less, they're supposed to match pretty closely with one another. They don't always match up 100%, but over the long term, they do. And so this is it's another measure of GDP, but on the income side, right? So you guys are accountant, most of you guys are accountants. So right, you have the income side and you have the other side, which in the case of economic accounting is production and output. So those are the two. And the one thing with the income is, because you can have fiscal transfers or intergovernmental transfers, like so what we saw with Social Security is included in that, and but you also see the fiscal stimulus is you can have intertemporal borrowing, right? So you can have that is why the TPI can exceed the GDP in certain years or be smaller, because we can borrow. We're borrowing against the future or lending against the future.
Doesn't it also includes like transfers, like from gifts and inheritances into the state? I thought
It does consider supplements to wages, compensation to employees, proprietor income, rental income of persons with capital consumption adjustment, personal income receipts and assets, and personal income transfer receipts.
Yeah, it is mainly wage income. That's the dominant one, about 50–60% of it. But it also includes the Social Security receipts, because in our retirement years, that would be the source of income. And it also includes imputed income from owning a home. So as if you were paying rent to it. So this is kind of related to more like gross domestic product. And it kind of looks at a point in time. And for that very reason, it focuses on earnings and does not look at long-term fluctuations in assets, but it will capture dividends, interest, and rental income for a given period of time. In this case, it's the annual.
Does any of the categories capture like money coming into the Hawaii economy, you know, from gifts or inheritances from other countries or other states? Or is that, I can't remember.
I don't see that in the list, but
Okay.
How
Maybe I
would you
missed
capture that? Yeah.
I mean, if it's income of it's the income of a resident Hawaii taxpayer,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, gifts usually are not from a tax point of view, it's not considered income.
Yes, I don't think I don't think it's included. It's what we mean by transfer receipts are things like Social Security and also it includes things like earned Medicare, Medicaid, these benefits as well.
So the government,
unemployment.
And unemployment as well, unemployment insurance compensation. Yes, that's
So
correct.
we were things got really messed up during the COVID periods where a lot of people did not have income from the normal sources, but so much money came flooding in due to the stimulus that came through with all the extra government payments, that it really kind of swamped the numbers back and forth various ways. We're kind of back to normal. So I think we can I think forecast with a little bit, well, I shouldn't ever say that. I shouldn't say certainty, but it's a little bit, it's less of a roller coaster without all of that fiscal stimulus flowing into these numbers.
Yeah, Dr. Cody and Dr. Vibers, we taped the training session that you and Vibers gave about a year ago. Well, didn't we record it?
I don't know if did we record it? We can check.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have a recording of it, and and the slides are still available if you would like to. Roderick can make that available.
Yeah, for the new council members, Councilmember Hamasa and Councilmember Astegard Clem, it may be good for them to be able to watch that and look at the materials. That I thought that you guys did an excellent presentation. Yeah, just to kind of bring them up to speed on, you know, what makes up the process and what makes up the total personal income.
Yeah, I remember it being recorded because I couldn't make that class.
Oh yeah, then
so they recorded it for me, so I was able to watch it after. So it was excellent.
So you did watch it afterwards? Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to start the discussion? Normally we turn to Dr. Bonham, but
Yeah, he's a big loss when he's not here, but
yes, especially for personal income.
It looks like 4% is kind of a good number for this year and next year. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but
because we had what 4.5 and then 3.8 for 2024, and 4.5 was based on the model We copied the model for one of the rare times. So is that where we start at 4.5? And has there been any big changes? I know we were worried in August about tax collections from estimated tax payments. And I guess if my recollection was right, that we were going to try to get an idea what September looked like, because that's a quarterly payment, and how those revenues came in. And I'm just wondering how that turned out, because we had like a 19% dip from the previous year for August, was my recollection. And was there any recovery in September, October?
If Councilmember Lee, I think if I remember right, didn't we have this last meeting before the Lahaina fires? I think the Lahaina fires was August 7th, was it August? No, I forgot what date it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the meeting was like August 1st or something.
And then the governor came on, remember, to chat with us, because it had just occurred, and his feelings.
That was the general fund, right? He came to address us in September. Yeah. So it was it September was the Lahaina fires. But our last TPI meeting, I think, was either end of July or beginning of August. It's in the mail.
Yeah, so I did remember that we were worried about individual tax collections. And that was the big thing we talked about. And I was just wondering if there's been some kind of recovery there.
So individual personal income tax remains up on the year. Withholdings remains up. What has been reduced is the estimated tax payments. And they are continuing to see low estimated tax payments in September, just like you saw in previous months. And we would expect that all year round, right? People generally pay the same estimated taxes, all for quarterly payments. So we weren't really expecting a rebound there either.
Okay.
It just in terms of like easy guidance is like, we do provide you with the TPI readings in table 2 for the first 2 quarters of 2023. So you guys can check to see if you guys feel comfortable with your forecast.
What are the numbers, Dr. Kobe, for the first 2 quarters?
The first 2 quarters was up 5.8% and 5.5%.
So it was pretty strong.
But those were coming off of those were compared to previous quarters that had seen declines.
So those are growth rates from the previous quarter, or the comparable quarter?
Year-on-year quarter. It's a year-on-year change from the quarter of the year before.
Okay.
Right, Bybars, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we were coming.
That is correct.
Coming off of some pretty low numbers.
Yeah, because that was comparing
previous
it.
year.
Yeah, because it was 21, right? The first 2 quarters of 21 compared to the first 2 quarters of 20.
And then Wendell, just the wage data, the wage income at the national level continues to be pretty strong.
Okay.
Right, so wage growth, like the last number that came out 2 days ago, was 3.5%, which is still pretty higher than what people are expecting, right? And so that's one of the reasons why the Fed is waiting to see if they need to in reserving the right to raise rates even further.
Right.
So could I also suggest that, looking at I know you have it in table 1, line 15, about the non-ag wage and salary jobs, and it continues to increase the first 2 quarters of this calendar year. So it's holding steady. Is that another factor that helps to kind of boost our comfort zone there?
Good sign.
Yeah, positive. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, in addition to what, that Seth, what you're saying about the jobs report that came out at the federal level, right? Yeah. I think that's
So the one thing that is, of course, going the opposite direction for us is Maui. And with what's going on there with the income impact, we certainly have seen unemployment increase there. And tourism is coming back, but I don't know, for people who have been there, I was just, it's a very somber place. I'm not sure that tourism is going to snap back real quickly there. We only have the rest of this year in this forecast, but I think that will be a drag on the total numbers.
A great point.
And I was going to add one other thing. So to Chris's point of reducing our forecast a little bit, I think it does make sense. Looking back at my notes from the prior meeting, I think one of the things that did get cut from where we were looking at, I think the dividends, interest, and rents, we were looking at actual as of Q1 when we met in August was 6.6%, and looking at the forecast now, I think it's in table 9. That forecast estimate is 4.12, so it's coming down a little bit. So we may have been seeing a little bit more dividends and interest early in the year, and it's may have slid back. So I think that was a major piece too. I think some of these other numbers too, even our labor numbers, our labor earnings was at 5.9%, and looking here it's at 3.95. So some of those numbers have slid back a little bit, which would, I think, justify cutting our forecast from the 4.5 to like around a 4.
Councilmember Hamasu, you have any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of questions. Realizing that I'm probably jumping in the deep end of the pool. Question, I know we in the prior Council of Revenues meeting, the governor mentioned the percentage that Lahaina's economy has on a statewide impact. What was that number again? Does anybody?
It's less than 1%.
Less than 1%, yeah.
So if it's less than 1%, ultimately the GDP for the state would be not affected dramatically by the drop in activity in Lahaina then. Is that a safe assumption to be made?
How is the 1% measured? What does that represent?
It's the representative of Lahaina's contribution to total state GDP.
GDP.
Okay.
So it's a little different metric we're measuring. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just Lahaina, of course.
Yeah.
It's the whole state, because it's not just the whole state is going to be suffering
Yeah.
from what's happening there.
Yeah, because initially a lot of tourists were leaving, right? Not too many tourists were coming to visit Maui, and Maui has had a high average hotel rate. And then now we're trying to get the tourists to start coming back, but at the same time, it's one of coming back. They don't have the Lahaina portion to.
So, and
Enjoy.
another statistic that may be helpful is
Yeah.
Maui's contribution to state GDP is about 12%.
12%, yeah.
12 or 13.
And then he also discussed the transfer payments from the government coming in was probably going to make up for some of that shortfall. But since we're talking about TPI, I guess it doesn't, we're really not factoring that piece in. It's more about individual earnings. So how
The transfer payments also count.
yeah, that's what was my question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. No, it's really hard to know if the loss of income, because it's not just, of course, the people who were so dramatically affected. The businesses are not back up. The restaurants are not full. You're not hiring back all of the servers and the like, even for businesses that were not directly harmed. So it has slowed things down, but therefore what? It's really hard to put a number on that. We know that it is probably not positive, because I don't think all the aid coming in totally replaces what people have lost.
And I think it's going to take time as well. So
And do we know how much government aid has been brought into Maui as a result of the fires?
That's been a mystery.
Seth, do you have those numbers?
I don't have those numbers on hand. They were substantial, but again, I think there's two questions. How much money has been approved for Hawaii's reconstruction and how much has been deployed are two different questions.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, it is the income, right? So one of the things that was a surprise to a lot of people on this committee was how the PPP loans in different government aids showed up on the income statements of income reporting. I don't know how that's going to play out here and at what time. And
Right.
those are very important questions.
But
And
at
I
the
don't
very-
think it's started yet, right?
But at, oh, sorry, Christy.
No, please go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
But at the very least, then it'll show up, at least the unemployment insurance would be showing up,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, within our time period that we're looking at. And those
Yeah.
other things, you know, whether that money that's committed through from the federal government is, you know, what year money is it? Is it going to be like promised and then what, you know, won't be till the next quarter or 2 quarters? I mean, I agree that makes it so complicated, but at least the unemployment insurance we can count.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
during
The
COVID, I
rents will
think
show up.
they were super generous, the unemployment, but normally is unemployment, does it fully cover the lost wages and salaries? Normally, I thought it's a percentage.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. But COVID, I know the federal government was really generous in what they offered.
So from the 4.5, we're feeling like it's something lower, and you know, Scott had mentioned maybe 4. Is that what people are comfortable with?
I think I'm comfortable with 4. Do you need an absolute, you probably need a motion, yeah? Scott, do you want to make an actual motion?
That was actually your number, Christy. So
Oh.
I'll let you make the
Well, then I'll second that.
We're all thinking on the same line.
motion.
Councilmember Amasian, do you have any comments about?
Well, in terms of
The number that's being
Forecast
tossed around
or-
now is 4. It's 4%. So reduce it from 4.5 to 4.
yeah, I would feel more comfortable with a lower number than a higher percentage. I also had another question relating to the models that are being, I guess, bandied about. I don't know how long they've been in existence, but I'm looking at it and it seems that there's a significant amount of weighting on construction expenditures.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why that component of the economy has such a heavy rating on TPI? I'm not familiar with why that's the case.
Barbara, do you want to answer that?
I've not been around long enough, but it's basically the contracting portion of the GET, and that does keep the pulse of the economy pretty accurately historically. That's why we use that as a good indicator. So it's one of the indicators, but the majority of it is this is dependent on the previous periods. So it's what we call an autoregressive model. So a big chunk of it is that it depends on how total personal income has evolved over time. And visitor numbers are always a big indicator too. So those are the top 2 that we kind of talk about. But when we go to something called the component equation, we separately estimate different components of what makes up total personal income. So that's why you kind of see different forecast values when you compare a single equation versus component equation. But in this case, since we're kind of back to kind of the baseline, there's not fluctuation between different models. So they're all around 4 point something in 2023, and then 3.5 to 4 point something in 2024. But that's the main reason. It's usually gives a good pulse of the economy as we stand.
Yeah, it's my exposure to the real estate industry is that because of the increase in the interest rates, construction lending is down significantly. So if your models are reliant upon construction expenditures, Not to say that's going to impact us right now, but the concern is that, you have your annual single equation, annual component equation, they all include construction expenditures as a component that, you're vulnerable to maybe a downswing in construction activity should, let's say inflation affects construction materials, oil affects transfer of materials to Hawaii. All of that would be a negative drag on construction activity. But I don't know, that's just the concern that I have, that the reliance on construction as part of your modeling. But
And Mike,
Yeah.
I would kind of counter that a little bit, because that's with regard to residential or I guess private construction. But the government, with the infrastructure bills and everything else, there's large government spending that's happening right now, which I think is, at least in the near term, in the short term, is kind of offsetting some of the slowdowns. At least we're seeing it from our side, slowdowns on the private and the residential side. So it might be a wash. But yeah, you're right about the impact of the interest rates, because large development projects are slowing down, or they've been put on hold, definitely.
And the other thing too is the permitting process is so slow. You got just projects backed up, and I think that hurts the economy.
So just to clarify, in terms of the methodology, when it comes to the future years, what we are relying on is actually the members' own forecast for construction going forward that you submit for the general fund meeting. So it partially reflects your own opinions as well, Mr. Hamasu, but all the members as well. So that's what we rely on when it comes to future expectations of construction expenditures.
Baybars, with regard to that, I mean, is the reason why that piece impacting TPI in this situation is because that those are the larger economic drivers to, I guess, personal income, as far as tourism and construction? Is that the two drivers?
Yes.
It's a big driver from the fund, right? Construction activity. The people that work in construction, when things are hot, they also tend to spend a lot of their money. And it recycles throughout the economy. That's been my exposure to the construction sector.
As I said, it's a good indicator of where we stand in terms of which direction the incomes are heading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would agree with Mike that in my business too, I'm certainly seeing a slowdown on the lending side for private construction, both residential and larger commercial. We certainly are expecting a slowdown in demand there. But yeah, how much does the public side overshadow that? Seems like there's a lot there. And the public doesn't have the permitting problems, right? They don't need to wait for months or years to get something approved. Is my understanding anyway.
I want to thank everyone for their clarification, because I'm assuming that I'll learn as I go, but we've seen a dramatic slowdown in residential home sales, and we've seen a dramatic drop off in investment activity for commercial real estate. So of course, those are the two areas that I'm exposed to. Are those reflected in TPI in terms of, I guess, investment sales activity and the resulting taxes that are generated off of that?
So for TPI, if you account for the increase in home prices, that is a capital gains, right? So that is a stock measure, right? And so that is not something that would be included. What would be included is if there was either brand new construction, so they're building a new home or a whole new apartment complexes, or like you're redoing your kitchen. That would also count in it. But and on a secondary measure, like all the real estate people, all the mortgage brokers, they make their living through that. So that will play indirectly in how things go. But the housing sector directly does not have to do with things. We also, like people in the construction section are complaining about price increases, inflation, trying to find somebody to work for them. So the construction sector, as far as I understand it, is super hot right now, overall. And the ones with like the $1 billion contracts, that's who we're talking about. It's hard to find people, right? It's hard to find asphalt.
But Seth, to Mike's point, if projects are being halted, I mean, yeah, from an investment perspective, that may not be included, but the rents would be, right? So rental income that is generated from these commercial properties would be included in TPI, right? So to the extent that commercial activity is slowing down and those rents may not be materializing that people were forecasting, then to that extent, I would think it would impact TPI, right? It would be a negative drag on it.
Yep. Well, you guys are forecasting a dynamic economy, and there's going to be gains and losses, and you have to understand and figure out the relative weights of each one and how they all come together.
Councilmember Ostergaard, Clem, do you have comments about what we're discussing? And we're looking at possibly dropping the forecast for TPI from 4.5 to 4.
Yeah, no, I think that all these comments are kind of putting more weighting on the fact of that to go more towards the 4 as the number. But I do have a question though, just about table 6, just kind of for my information. So this is the kind of first time I've really, had to dive down deep into this packet. But so under on table 6, where the estimates that are given, the model forecast as of November 2023, so how recent are those numbers that go? The first question is, how recent are the numbers, like, for example, visitor arrivals? How recent are those numbers that are plugged into that model? And second of all, if I were to look back at the packet, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, but if I were to look back at the packet that when you all met August 1st or whatever, the previous TPI meeting, because that was before I was on the board, what would the model estimates have been from that? And I'm just trying to see the comparison of.
That's a good question. So what we have different in this one is we have the first 2 quarters of 2023 that is in the model, whereas for the August meeting, we only have the first quarter. And when we do the annual models, it only uses the previous year. So it will be until the end of 2022. So in that regard, the quarterly data will be a bit more current and accurate. And for that reason, you're right that by the time we come to the October or November meeting, we have information for the first 2 quarters. So what remains is just what would happen in the next 2 quarters, if that is going to be any different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. But then that wouldn't include Maui. That wouldn't include
It wouldn't include. It goes on to end of June. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Great. Thanks.
Did you have any other comments or questions? Councilmember Ostergaard, Clem?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm still kind of trying to find my way through the tables, but that all of this discussion is great. It's helping to clarify a lot. Thank you so much.
Any further discussions before we take a vote on the 23 calendar year? Okay, we'll take a vote. So the vote was it proposed by Councilmember Maynard, right? Vice Chair Maynard, and seconded by Hayashi, Councilmember Hayashi. So the vote is to either 2023
or vice versa.
Oh, vice versa. Okay. The TPI forecast for calendar year 2023 would be at 4% rather than 4.5%. Vice Chair Maynard?
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Hayashi?
Aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamasu?
Aye.
Councilmember Ostergaard, Clem?
Aye.
Okay, so the vote carries unanimously. So that turns us to the next calendar year, 2024. Anyone want to start us out?
The hard one.
So I'll throw out a general comment that I think based upon what we've been talking about and the impact of Maui, I think that would justify a decrease in where we were from 3.8. Where that number is, I'm not sure yet, but it seems, yeah, with some of the headwinds that we're going to be facing, as Mike mentioned, these other pieces that are coming in with regard to interest rate increases and slowdown in certain areas of construction, even though other areas may be picking up, how long that'll last, not sure. But I think to be a little conservative, it would seem that we should probably be dropping our forecast from 3.8 to somewhere, I don't know, 3.25 or somewhere in that neighborhood, dropping it by about 0.5% or so at least.
Well, am I reading this right, that that we were at a higher number than that before?
Yes, I think our August forecast was 3.8.
3.8 for calendar year 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Which is reflected in the models, but then again, those models are limited to timeline.
Yeah, I mean, you asked a very good question. What is in the models? What periods, like tourism? It's only through the first 2 quarters.
In the quarterly models, the first 2 quarters of 2023 are there. For the annual model, it only uses 2022, annual 2022.
Okay.
But for the forecasting of the future, we rely on your own forecasts. So that's where the two come together. So it's backward looking in the sense of how these variables depend on each other over time. But at the same time, when it comes to forecasting the future values, we rely on what you expect the visitor arrival numbers are going to be, what the construction expenditures numbers are going to be. We rely on those numbers in forecasting the future values. So in a way, it is your own opinions are reflected, but in a weighted average way.
Who has a heavier weighting?
Councilmember Hamasi?
No, when he said they're weighted, I was just wondering, there's maybe 6 or 7 of us. Are we all weighted the same, or is it a heavier weighting on more experienced, or?
No, it's equal. One vote, one vote.
Everybody's equal there.
Well, the question I have is, I'm looking at this table with the forecast. Has DBED forecasting as of September visitor arrivals of what are 2.8% and Euro of 4%? I guess that's what the TPI forecasts are.
Those are the TPI forecasts from their forecast.
Do we have an idea where they are? These two entities are forecasting where visitor arrivals will be at the end of 2024.
I can't find out.
Yeah, those
Also,
are published.
Councilmember Hamasu, was that for their forecast for TPI as of September?
Well, I was looking at table 6, but because the models include construction and visitor arrivals, I was thinking that if I were to make a estimated forecast of 2024, I'd like to know what these other entities are forecasting for visitor arrivals, because I think that is a component in these models. So
for DBED, they're forecasting 3.5% increase for 2024. This is just from the website.
Right. And then UHERO is actually forecasting a decline of 0.9% in visitor arrivals for 2024.
Wow, that's quite a difference between those.
But their TPI forecast is higher. So UHERO is 4%, DBED is at 2.8%.
Is that a typical pattern that they've been following over the years? The difference between UHERO and DBED? That seems to be a typical pattern, or?
I think I've noticed that for the past at least couple years, that DBED tends to be a little bit lower than UHERO is. Well, I guess I take that back. I guess it depends on the timing of when these events are occurring, because I've noticed Uhiro tends to be a little bit higher with regard to, I guess, spots of recovery. DBED seems to have been lower as far as those spots go in the past. But when it flips around, when the economy is going good, I don't recall whether or not Uhiro was lower than DBED. And I want to say I think it was. I think at one point in time, prior to COVID, I want to say I think DBED was much more bullish on their forecasts, and Euro might have been lower. So I think it depends on the circumstances and where they are. I will note that one thing is, so to Mike's point, as far as timing and everything else goes, so these, DBED and Uhiro's forecasts both are after the fires. So their forecasts, these latest forecasts, I think take into account the impact of the Lahaina fires on the economy in general. But prior to it, I think for our August meeting, so their forecast as of June and May, so DBED was June 1, Uhiro's was May 12th. They were at 3.2 was DBED, and Uhiro was at 4.2. So so in this case, yeah, they both dropped their forecast, and I don't know if it's, Lahaina probably has something to do with it. It might also be the interest rates, and the potential, because I recall, I think Carl had mentioned that that the recession may miss Hawaii, or the impact of it might be lessened because of the offsets, and we still haven't seen the Japanese market come back as far as tourism goes and some of those other factors. So I think I recall Carl mentioned that the impact to us might be relatively minor compared to the rest of the nation, but he was still expecting some kind of slowdown and some kind of recession in general.
Well, the economy has certainly been surprising us lately. Consumers are consuming, which is a lot of things. What they like to do is experience, including trips to Hawaii. So we are fortunate that things aren't worse. But yeah, I think there is the impact from Maui is going to be felt in some way. Well,
Christy,
we know we want to go down.
yeah. So, Christy, sorry, one other question for you. We were talking about this kind of before the call, but with the Fed not moving the interest rates today,
yeah,
how do you think that may impact, I guess, spending and other types of things in general?
Well, it's a really odd. The yield curve has been flattening. The inversion has been going away for kind of an odd reason. Usually the yield curve normalizes because rates come down, and the short rates come down. This is normalizing by longer rates going up, and I think that does mean that, which is a little unusual. I mean, it's happened before, but that to me means that costs are going to stay high, higher for longer, so that we, unless the economy does go into a recession, we haven't seen any signs of it yet. The Fed said they're going to keep the rates high, and that just means everything is more expensive. To Mike's point, 80% of mortgages are below 5%. So that means there's a lot of people who are stuck with golden handcuffs. They don't want to even if they want to downsize, if they sold their house and had to buy another one and finance it, it's just very, very expensive. So that is really slowing down certainly the residential real estate market. That means the realtors, the brokers, the mortgage bankers who came to Hawaii and now have left. A lot of local companies are laying off people just because the volume isn't there. So those high interest rates certainly are affecting, so on the margin, are affecting business in Hawaii, affecting the markets. So higher for longer. I mean, rates were at 0 or too low. There's no question. So I think this might be the new normal. I don't know, but it wasn't that long ago when 5.5% Fed funds was a pretty natural rate. So, it's painful in the short run, especially for those who are in the market for housing.
But I have
So do we have, oh, go ahead.
I have a question in regards to inflation and the impact on TPI. If inflation remains, let's say, elevated, the generated income, I mean, everybody's wages have a tendency to go up, but you don't buy as much. But still, with inflation, you're spending more to buy the same amount of goods. So, but if you were to reflect that on TPI, wouldn't TPI go up because inflation remains high?
General excise tax.
Yeah, it does. We are not doing it. We are including the impact of inflation. So even if people's salaries don't change at all in real terms, but inflation is up 3%, we would show a 3% increase.
That's right. These are nominal. So yeah, inflation would affect it.
Okay, thank you.
Any proposal for, I think, Scott, you were thinking 3.25?
Yeah, I just threw that number out there, just thinking that, we dropped our 2023 forecast by 50.5 or half a percent. So I just threw out dropping it at the 2024 by a similar margin.
I would be okay with that. I'll second that.
Oh, you second that? Okay.
So is that 3.3 or 3.25?
I just made it nice and easy, 3.25.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big
If I were to
difference.
propose 3.5, how do I make that motion?
Oh, you can make the motion at 3.5 if that's.
Do you think
If
it
you
should be
want-
higher, Mike? Do you think it should be higher?
So the original forecast for 2024 says 3.88. I think maybe 3.5 might be a little more realistic. I think 3.25 might be a little too low, only because, well, based on the conversation that inflation is incorporated into this, that even if you have an inflation rate of 3%, we can assume that maybe at least a 0.5% growth in the market if we avoid a recession.
And
Yeah,
that would be
how do you feel
consistent
about
with our drop. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, a recession, Mike, because that's been a lot of thought. We've had a lot of discussion about potential recession.
But just to be clear.
Yeah.
Our forecast, I know there's so many numbers in these reports, I keep looking back and forth. But our forecast in August was 3.8 for 2024, correct? 3.8, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Not 3.88, 3.8 exactly.
Oh,
3.8.
Yeah, I don't think we would do
Yes.
88.
yeah, I
Okay.
was looking at the average of all the forecasts. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's
I
so
don't
many
remember.
numbers.
That's a good luck number doing 88, but it's. But do you want to? You're thinking 3.5, Mike?
Yeah, I'm maybe a little more optimistic, thinking that it won't drop that much based on kind of the feedback, but I think instead of 3.8, maybe a 3.5. There'll still be a decline in the original forecast, but maybe a little bit stronger than 3.25.
You don't see a recession in the 24 toward the end? Because
Hearing from our expert economist, I'm assuming that Hawaii will avoid one, so we'll have a marginal growth in the market. Probably a decrease in the number of air passenger arrival counts, but because we still have inflation, I think TPI will be moderated. I think it will still have a slowdown, but not a dramatic slowdown, not a 0.5% or more decline.
the Japan economy, I mean, how much is the tourism sector, Dr. Kobe, from Japan? Is it about 12% of the tourists?
Well, the tourist or yeah, they're about 12%, but they represent a larger portion of the tourism revenue normally. But domestic tourists are now like big spenders too. So
Mhm.
it's
And we really enjoyed a really strong domestic tourism market, right? People coming from the mainland since COVID.
right, and that's declining
Yeah,
because they're still coming. They're just not paying $900 a night for Maui hotels.
yeah.
Right?
And I think now we have a lot more competition that opened up throughout the world.
Correct.
Before, even with COVID, people, there's such a hassle to go to some of the travel abroad. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to ask Carl if he was here. I would want to ask him questions why he thinks, if Japan is about 12%, why that would kind of ease any kind of impact we have from a recession.
I think we had, Regina, do you have a question or a comment?
Or just something to throw out there to think about. I don't even know if this is something to even worth discussing, but so if we're looking into the future and we're looking at, the potential impacts on visitor arrivals in the future. So what about the spending patterns of, people outside of Hawaii, from the mainland, right? So if we're kind of more recession proof here in Hawaii, but that doesn't mean that, how's that going to work for people from other states that are coming, domestic travelers that are coming here, if they've already used up a lot of their savings, or if they've already, having inflation still be high and all those types of things. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, if they have less money, then I think they're going to spend less, right? And then traditionally, I think at one point that we're looking at new Chinese travelers, and they were going to be initially they were very high. They're spending even more than the Japanese. And I think traditionally the mainland travelers were below, they weren't as high historically as like for example the Chinese travelers. But I guess after the recession, they're spending quite a bit, is what I remember.
If we went into a recession, then if the dollar gets weaker, what happens is foreign travelers then start seeing a discount. And so
Yeah.
That's been kind of the conundrum for Hawaii that kind of keeps Hawaii going in a way. It's in a way a good and bad thing, but that's kind of been the trend, right? And you'll see different nationalities, coming in depending on how the dollar is doing and the exchange rate is doing with their country. So that's generally been the trend. But last couple of years have proven everything's kind of weird. So
Yeah, I don't know, Christy and Scott, what are you guys thinking about Mike's proposal at 3.5?
Sorry, I had a quick question for Seth, following up on kind of what Regina was mentioning. So do we know what domestic visitor spending has been? Has it declined in the past few months?
Yes, and it was declining before the Maui fires.
Okay. So it's going, and we know that interest rates were increasing over the past few months too. So I mean, it's reflecting kind of that the costs are going up in general, with inflationary impacts that Mike was referring to as well. So it would seem that that Regina's point of that it's more expensive for them to come here, and so they may be coming, but they're spending less, right? Is I think what we're seeing. So okay.
I think when we had a lot of those vacation rentals that before they tightened who could do vacation rentals, we had a lot, and we had those really cheap fares. You have more tourists coming in that aren't spending very much, they're.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
Two numbers up there. Yeah.
there's two numbers, but there's been a first and second at, was it 3.3 or 3.25?
3.25.
3.25. Any further discussion?
You want to split the difference and go?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
3.35 or something?
That works.
Fine with that.
3.35.
Okay.
How's that, Mike? Is that something you think?
I mean, I know how exacting this is, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if possible, we try to reach a consensus unanimous vote, but sometimes we can't, you know, you're gonna have people dissent.
Yeah.
I don't, Councilmember Ostergaard Clem, do you have any comments?
No, I think I was thinking the same. I like that term, split the difference.
Okay,
That works for me.
okay, so do we have a motion or a revised motion?
So moved.
So you're gonna propose 3.38 and then.
3.25.
Second it?
3.35, I think we're at.
Yes, that's a motion. 3.35.
3.35,
And I'll second that motion.
okay. Any further discussion at 3.35?
You guys are like twins today. Like
I
the whole
know. it's
I
just-
know.
pattern or
I know.
something.
Councilmember, that doesn't happen at every meeting though.
No,
I mean,
it doesn't.
we have you know, we're very fortunate. All the members that, you know, other than me are very smart, but very strong-willed too.
The holiday season is coming.
Okay, we'll take a vote at 3.35 growth rate for the TPI for calendar year 2024. Vice Chair Mueller,
Aye.
Councilmember Hayashi,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamasu,
Aye.
Councilmember Ostergaard Clem.
Aye.
Aye. So the vote carries unanimously. So the council has decided on a 3.35 growth rate for calendar year 2024. Okay. Next item on the, I think it's the last item, is the next general fund forecasts. And what is the report date, Dr. Colby?
January 10th.
Okay, January 10th. So normally we get the Christmas holidays, some indication of ideally the Christmas holiday sales. When do you think you might
I
have
mean, to
the,
be clear, we do not get any indication of Christmas holiday sales because
well,
even
because that's for November,
that's
right?
for November activity.
Yeah, so, well, at least, well, we don't capture, we just capture the early Christmas sales and Black Friday and stuff.
But you have to report on the 10th? Is that-
Correct.
Yeah. When would we get the numbers for December,
On the 9th.
the 9th?
But that's a really tough turnaround for us if
Yeah,
we did it
yeah,
on
I
the
wouldn't wanna
9th.
have it
So
be-
I would either suggest the 8th or the 4th.
Would you have
Honestly,
some indication on the 8th?
Yeah, we can get you, we'll always get you some kind of numbers.
okay. How would the 8th at 2 p.m. be for everyone? January 8th at 2 p.m.
That works for
2024.
me.
That's a
Works for me
Monday.
as
right?
well.
Yes.
It's a Monday.
Yeah, that works for me. 'Cause I have a new schedule coming up for the new semester. And so Mondays and Wednesday afternoons work best for me for the new
Okay.
semester. So Monday would be good.
Okay. Councilmember Hayashi and Lee, is that
Yep,
good? for
I'm
you?
good.
That works for me. Yeah.
How about
Um,
Mike?
Councilmember Hamasu?
Yeah, you said January 8th at 2 p.m.?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so the next meeting will be at, on the general fund for the Council of Revenues will be Monday, January 8th at 2 p.m. Okay.
Does that
and-
give you enough time, Seth?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's also, we need your participation,
Yeah,
right?
we-
So
we
your
have to
quick
turn it around.
turnaround is,
Yeah, between Krista and I. Okay. Okay, that's the next meeting. If you and Bybars wouldn't mind, Dr. Bybars sending the PowerPoint and the link to Dr. Ostergaard, Clem, and Councilmember Hamasu.
yeah, we can
Okay.
have, we'll have Rick do that.
Okay, and actually, if you could copy all the council members too, because I might want to watch it again.
Good refresher.
Right.
Yeah. good reflect-
Slides
good-
are also available. So yeah,
Yeah.
so you can, yeah, we'll send both.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Happy
Okay,
holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh, you have a question? Oh, okay. Okay, goodbye. Okay.